I've never cooked rice like this before. This is very bizarre. What you can't see is I have my assistant off screen handing me things. I'm gonna put in half the garlic. Hello friends, it's Sarah, and today I have a cooking video. So I read Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly, and I want to talk about it. And this is a book that features a cooking competition, and yet has no one recipe that stands out at all. So I figured I would just cook. We started trying HelloFresh, so I would just cook our HelloFresh meal while talking about this book, because there's no like iconic meal in it. And that kind of gives you the gist of how this book went for me. All right, so this is an adult romance book. It follows Dahlia, who is a contestant on a cooking show and is queer, and then it also follows London, who is non-binary and is another contestant on this cooking show. And so it's basically just, you know, cooking show, they're rivals in that, but they're still like falling for each other. You know, it's a romance book, that's how it goes. They're falling in love all the time regardless of what their situation is. I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars, which is sad because I was really excited for a culinary romance. I love that genre because I can't cook very well. And so I love reading about food. It makes me really hungry, but then I can't cook anything, so it's kind of sad. But still very, I don't know, escapism, I guess. It also had a non-binary protagonist, so that was really cool as well. But it just fell real flat for me. If I had to guess, I think what happened with this book was that they had like the author had like a big long intro, and then the editor was like, this is too much, cut it, and we'll just kind of start in the action and then kind of like retroactively explain what's going on, which often works in books. It did not work in this book. The main problem I found at the beginning was that we are thrown in and it's like they're starting to film episode 1. It's right before filming of episode 1, you're starting to meet these characters. And they like refer to all the different parts of the show, but you don't know what they are. Like, oh, they're doing like the this, and you're like, what the heck does that mean? They're not like super, I don't know, explanatory segments. So you're just kind of like, what the heck is happening? What is the format of this show? Like, I mean, you kind of know a vague format of a cooking show, but it was just really difficult for me to get my bearings in it. And this is a contemporary romance, and I feel like that should not be, like, the setting of the story should not be the confusing part. That's for like fantasy, where they have to explain a whole world. In a contemporary romance, I should be able to know more or less what's going on right away, and the setting is not the interesting part so much. It's like the characters and the relationship between them. But it just felt very bizarre that I had no idea what was happening in a cooking show. Okay, water. I add our 1 1/4 cups of water. So that was like the problem number 1, was like, I have no idea what's happening in this. And I felt like the development of the characters felt really slow as well for contemporary, because one of the tropes in here is like the sunshine grumpy. So like London is kind of like the grumpy. They're not like super grumpy, but they're a little more like stoic, whereas Dahlia is like the like super quirky sunshine, kind of think like Olive in The Love Hypothesis, but more like scattered. I thought she was too sunshine for me. She was just like incredibly like quirky, and it was really weird. Okay, now we set a timer for like 15 minutes and let that boil. When hot, add 1 tablespoon of butter and then swirl. Why are you making noises? The thing is like down here. So yes, so London is like the grumpy character, but they're not super grumpy. They're just kind of like not frantically quirky the way Dahlia is, and are a little more like focused, whereas she's very like, ooh, like clumsy me, I'm dropping things all over the place, and I just like can't seem to like figure out, I don't know, anything. I also felt the author did not do an excellent job of explaining why they were on this show or how they got there. Maybe like halfway through the book, there's kind of like a, oh yeah, when they went to this audition. But Dahlia has like insane student debt and quit her job before showing up to the show. And I think the prize is, I want to say it was like $100,000, which is like a lot of money, but also not like a quit your job level of money, especially when it's not guaranteed. You know, she's like one of 13 competitors. But there was never an explanation as to why she had to quit her job to do this. Like, not even just like a sentence being like, oh, her job wouldn't give her the time off to do this. She was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just like not super passionate about my job and I want to do like this cooking thing instead while I try and like figure out my purpose in life. You know, you're like almost on the edge of like destitution all the time. Maybe you should like stick with the job that is paying you rather than the 1 in 13 chance that you'll get $100,000. You know, it didn't seem very logical to me. Okay, add paneer. Thank you. Now we add the paneer. I've never cooked paneer before, so I don't know how this will go, but I'm sure it will be fine, probably. They said don't overcrowd it, but I also don't want to do 2 things because I'm lazy. So we're gonna crowd it maybe. Oh yeah, lots of room, we're good. And then it says, pan fry, turning occasionally till crispy and golden brown. Detach, friends. You're on your own now. In this cruel adult world. Codependent little bastards. Oh yeah, and I gotta season them with salt and pepper. These HelloFresh recipes have you adding salt to like a lot of different steps, and I don't trust it, so I only ever add like half the salt. Thanks, Adam Renuncia, for telling us not to salt everything, otherwise everything is extra salty. Anyways, so talked about my dislike of how the grumpy sunshine trope is carried out. Parsnip also doesn't like it. Okay, so yeah, so the characters were like just kind of like the tropes at the beginning, like London was very grumpy and she like ran into them and they were like, and like didn't say anything. And she was like, oh my god, I've made a new enemy for life. Why wouldn't you just assume that they're nervous because they're on a cooking show where they could potentially win $100,000 and it's their first time on TV? I don't know. I guess that's like a romance thing where they always assume like the weirdest possible thing for the plot, and it's fine. But after that, on page, I want to say like 35, London is suddenly like in love with Dahlia. And like they've had like 2 interactions and kind of it's just like they've seen her across the studio and they're like, wow, her hair, her teeth. And I'm like, do you have a tooth fetish? Her teeth are mentioned so often. It's super weird. That was really uncomfortable. Maybe they should have been an orthodontist or something if they're that into teeth. So they've like decided that they're like head over heels for Dahlia. 35 pages in. Meanwhile, I'm like, I don't even know what either of you are like. You don't have a personality yet. And you're suddenly like, oh wow, this is like the coolest girl ever. I'm like, do you know what she's like? Because so far all she's done is drop stuff on TV and have long hair. Her teeth, that's like, yeah. So it was kind of insta-lovey, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I'm not really an insta-love kind of person, so another strike against the book from me. By, I don't know, I want to say like page 50 or so, they had already, ooh, this is very hot. Getting them nice crispy golden brown, maybe a little too golden brown. Pause for paneer flipping. I feel like I need tongs or something to flip these properly. You think I can do a pan flip? You know how uncoordinated I am, Wesley. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, they've fallen in love. Okay, yeah, so by page, I want to say like 50, and I can't remember if this was before London decided they were in love with Dahlia, or maybe after slightly, but they'd already filmed like 3 different episodes of the show in like maybe 50 pages, and it was just like one scene of the episode here, another like scene of the episode there, not even like a full segment of the cooking show. Like, excuse me? What do you mean they're on episode 5 now? I still don't understand how this cooking show works. It felt like The whole cooking show aspect of this did not feel like it was done by someone who loves food and who loves cooking shows. It just felt like it was an interesting kind of like setting for them to try to like, you know, do different like contrived romance things. And it was just kind of sad because I feel like I've read a lot of books that feature cooking and food, and like the food is so like lovingly described and it just makes you hungry and you want to eat. And this one did not do that for me. I found like they talked about the recipes in like very, I don't know, vague terms. Like, oh, she made like a swordfish with this. And like they don't describe the cooking process. They don't describe like any intricacies of the dish really. It didn't feel very loving. It didn't feel like the author liked cooking or food or cooking shows even. Which was sad because that's kind of one of the best things about culinary pop culture is just this like great love of food, and then it makes you appreciate food even more and it makes you hungry. And there's some authors who just do that so well. Like I read a Jasmine Guillory book recently where it was alright, but like the way she described food, I was like, oh man, now I want to go eat food. Okay, till they're golden brown all over. They're not golden brown all over. They're golden brown on one side and then pasty AF on the other side. It's like me when I'm tanning. Because of like the insta-loviness too of the characters, a lot of the first like initial romance scenes were like Dahlia's lost in thought and all of a sudden she feels like a hand holding her hand, and oh look, it's London who's like grabbed her hand. Or like, oh, London's like off like looking over at something else, and all of a sudden they feel like Dahlia hug them from behind, and I'm like, you guys are just like tripping into this. Like, yes, they were both making like decisions to like do these things to each other, but it didn't feel very like, you know, there wasn't like the tension between it of like them like walking side by side and their hands brush a couple times and then they're like get all swoony and then like hold hands. It was just like suddenly they're holding my hand. I guess this is great. And I'm like, there was no romantic tension. They would just find themselves in romantic situations they kind of like hadn't realized they were in, where it's like, oh, suddenly someone's hugging me? What's going on? Okay, I guess this is all right. It didn't feel romantic. It just felt like, oh, nope, someone's hugging me. All right, cool. Yeah, parsnip. That's how it made me feel too. Woo! Can I call that Christy Brown all over?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Moving on to the next step because these are too difficult to flip and cook properly. Now we're going to put the paneer on a plate. Paneer. Plus we'll cook them some more, so it'll be fine. Paneer on plate. Plate to assistant. Cook veggies. Add half tablespoon of oil, then onions and peppers. Cook until tender crisp. They really like saying tender crisp in when they're talking about cooking vegetables. I'm like, you're not wrong, but it just feels like a weird way to say it. So we've got oil in the pan, and now we're gonna put veggies in the pan. And I have, where's the garlic coming?
After you.
Oh, after, okay. Thank you. Onion. Also, at the beginning of the book, I should mention, I forgot to mention, Dahlia is like recently divorced, so she's like a little lost in life, and that's why I guess that's why she's making weird decisions, but she's like, who am I outside of my marriage that ended? I think she had gone to like a therapist about this, and so they gave her the term like the building blocks of her life. And in the first 10 pages or so of the novel, she uses building blocks like 4 times a page. And I was like, I get it. You're goddamn building blocks. I understand. And then they never used it again. Like, it was all in that first little bit, and then she never talked about building blocks ever again. And I was like, you should have spread these like 40 uses of building blocks over the course of the entire novel to have it be a theme and not just like an annoyance at the very beginning. Because it was like really rough, y'all. I wanted to smack her so bad. And she wouldn't shut up about her stupid building blocks. Which is a shame, because I was like, ah yes, this makes sense. It's a great metaphor or whatever. But it was so frustrating. I also found the writing initially a little hard to understand. Like, I found myself rereading sentences like several times because I didn't quite understand what the author was trying to get across. It's not like that it was like really like, I don't know, purple prose or any like super lyrical thing. Nothing like that. It just like, I would read a sentence and I'd be like, what the heck does that mean? And like reread it a couple times and have to like say it out loud and be like, oh, okay, I see what you're trying to say. I also found that we missed a lot of the action in the book. Like they'd be like, the chapter was ending and they'd be like, all right, we're gonna go off to this thing to film a segment. And then the next chapter would begin and they're like, all right, we filmed that, now on to this other thing. And I'm like, why, if you've set your book in a cooking show, why do you not spend more of your time in the cooking show? Why are we always in the in-between moments between episodes? But even like, it was like in between episodes and I think Dahlia was like, I'm gonna like drive down somewhere and go shopping or whatever. And I can't remember if London came with her or not. But like we didn't see that at all. She was like, I can't go leave on this trip. And then she's like, I can't back. And I was like, you didn't need to include that. We didn't see her do that at all. The author did a lot of, okay, here we are right after the action. And now let's like go back and talk about the action. And I think some authors can do that fairly skillfully, but I think if you do that all the time in your novel, it just feels repetitive and annoying because you're like, what the heck just happened? And then they're like, all right, I'll tell you what just happened. And you're like, oh, okay. But if you do that for like everything, it just gets frustrating that I'm being shown the aftermath before the action, because then I don't care what happened in the action because I already know the outcome. I'm gonna say these are tender crisps now. So now what do? Add garlic and dal spice blend. I feel like I should also say this is not sponsored by HelloFresh. We just wanted to try it because we were like, is it actually worth it with the way that the groceries cost right now? Is it worth it to like do HelloFresh instead? And then we got like a good discount on the first box. And so with the first box, I would say, yeah, it was worth it because it was like $33 and it got us 3 meals. But normally it's like $83 and I'm like, we do not spend $83 a week on dinner alone, on 3 dinners alone. Like we'll spend that much on like all of our groceries for the week. So once our discount ends, I think we will no longer do HelloFresh. Maybe we'll just take the recipes. Anyways, back to the book. Okay, so they get together and then there's a sex scene. And like, I guess this is like a little bit spoilers because I'm going to tell you what kind of sex they're having. But they're like doing like weird like fruit stuff. Like they bought fruit and they're like running it over each other and stuff and then like licking it up. And that was not for me. All I could think was like, oh my god, that must be so sticky and uncomfortable to have like a cantaloupe rubbed across your body. And it was just, I don't know, I did not find it sexy at all. And I just thought, oh my god, you're gonna be such a mess. Your sheets are gonna be a mess. You're gonna feel so gross and sticky. And then I'm pretty sure they also were like, they both had their sexy time. And then they like, oh, fall asleep in each other's arms. I'm like, you fell asleep? Sticky? Ah! Disgusting. Absolutely illegal. All right, and now we have the coconut milk, which is not very milky. Use the butter knife to get it out. I found the milk part. I will say it is nice with HelloFresh that it's just like give you like all the ingredients and they're all already measured out, so you don't have to be like, how much of that is it again? It's just like put all of the thing they gave you in there. And I'm like, thank you. Measuring is too difficult for me. I feel like I'm on a cooking show, you know? I have a cat. Are you my producer? I have my cat producer. I have my boyfriend assistant. I have all of my ingredients coming in like perfectly portioned little baggies and on the cutting boards and stuff. This is great. I wish cooking was always like this. This is a lot easier than trying to measure things out all the time. But it's not enough to make me spend $82 on 3 dinners a week. It's not nice enough for that. Oh, also so there's like a few side characters. There's like an older lady who's part of the competition, and she's fleshed out an okay amount. But there's like some people where it's just like, they're like, oh, this person got kicked off. I love them so much. They were so lovely. And I was like, were they? Were they? I did not know you talked to them ever. Like, yeah, sure, maybe they worked near you and you like saw them, but you never had an interaction on page with this person. And so they're like, oh, I was so sad to see this person leave. Oh yeah, I know they'll be happy to go back to their family because they're so like family oriented. And I was like, since when do we know that? You can't just say that now as they're exiting the plot and expect me to just be like, oh yeah, now I feel like happy sad for them or bittersweet or whatever you try and make me feel. Because I'm like, they haven't been really a character in my mind. They've been like they've been like an NPC, you know? They're not a side character. They're just like some random person who's there because you needed to have another 11 contestants to flesh this out. So like that, it was just, again, like the retroactively explaining why you should care about these things or like what happened that really just like took me out of the story. And there's like kind of a villain contestant, and she was like, you know, they talked about her a bit too, but it was just like, it felt like it needed another round of edits. Okay, I think the sauce is like thickened a bit. Sponge babies. Great. And the paneer that kind of look like hash browns. And then we serve. Cool, we're almost done, which means I need to finish talking about this book and all the things I didn't like about it. But it felt like they didn't have much of an outline, and it was just kind of improv, and then they didn't ever go back and like set it up so that you could, you know, not even like predict things that were going to happen, but so that there would be like a bit of tension and a bit of an emotional reaction to things. The spinach is wilted, so I think this is done now. All right, so I'm going to plate up, and then I will show you what it all looks like and finish talking about the book, because it turns out there's a lot of things about this book that I don't like, and I'll try and think of something that I did like.
Can we maybe just head like the heat too low or
The second time I've done it, and I even put it on for longer. Like last time I did like 12 minutes, and this time I did 15. Maybe it is actually missing some salt. They were right. I'm sorry, good Hello Fresh gods. I guess I would rather like individually salt my plate than. It's also not spicy. You were right. I definitely add a lot of spice in this. There's like a tiny whisper of heat in the back of my throat after I've eaten it, but it's more like peppery than actually spicy. But it's tasty. I would make this again. Anyways, to finish talking about this book, I looked through and I had flagged 3 different places in this book, which is not a ton, but the only food in here that really like spoke to me was when they were talking about a thing called Muddy Buddies, which is when you take melted chocolate and peanut butter and powdered sugar and mix it all together with cereal in a bag. Which sounds delicious, but is not, like, this is just a childhood snack that they're talking about, not like a culinary dish. So there's also this part at the beginning where Dahlia says, Dahlia had dreams, but vague, blurry ones, dreams that held no concrete value, seeing the world, doing something she was passionate about, something meaningful. She simply had no idea what that something was. She worried that if she made cooking her career dream, she'd lose the joy in it. And sometimes this last year, it felt like that joy was all she had. And I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of get you're, you know, feeling a bit lost. You want to find your passion. You're worried that making your passion your job is going to ruin it. I feel you, girl. But like, don't quit your job that's paying you money when you're in so much debt. Ah! I like that there's non-binary representation in this. I thought that was really well done. Like there was one character who's kind of like the villain contestant where she misgendered London, but I think the author handled that really well of not actually like using whatever pronouns the contestant used, but just like saying that she had misgendered them. So I thought that was like really well and like respectfully done, which I appreciated, of being like, this traumatizing thing happened to them, but like I'm not going to repeat it. But yeah, overall, for a book that was 367 pages, somehow there's not enough like action things happening in here. I can't really explain where the pacing went so wrong, but I just felt like we got all the weird parts of the show and their experience on it. But yeah, that was Love and Other Disasters. More disaster than love, sadly. I mean, my friend liked it, so maybe it's just not my cup of tea. Let me know if you've read Love and Other Disasters and what you thought of it, because that was such a cute cover and I really enjoyed the concept of it, but it just did not deliver on its promise. Well, I'm gonna eat the rest of this tasty food and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for hanging out.
No?
That's not what it says. Trust me, Wesley, I can read. That's the only thing I can do in life. What ails you, child? Where are you? She's just crying from the ether.